Welcome to Unsolved Cases by Scoob, to deep dive into the unexplained. I'm your host, Larry Hunter, and today we're entering the dark corridors of downtown Los Angeles to unravel one of the internet's most enduring mysteries. Picture this. It's February 2013, and a routine maintenance check at a notorious hotel becomes the discovery that would captivate millions worldwide. This is the story of Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old Canadian student whose death would spark a decade of questions, theories, and sleepless nights for amateur detectives around the globe. Our story begins on January 26, 2013, with hope and adventure. Elisa Lam, a bright University of British Columbia student, embarked on what she called her West Coast tour, a solo journey through California that would tragically become her final adventure. Her social media painted a picture of joy and discovery, cheerful posts documenting her stops in San Diego, the excitement of a young woman exploring the world on her own terms. But Los Angeles would prove to be different. Elisa chose to stay at the Cecil Hotel in downtown LA, a decision that would forever intertwine her name with one of the city's most infamous establishments. Initially checking into a shared room, her stay took an ominous turn almost immediately. Other guests began complaining about her behavior they described as odd and unsettling enough that hotel staff felt compelled to move her to a private room. January 31st marked the last time hotel employees would see Elisa alive. What happened next would launch a missing person investigation that gripped not just Los Angeles, but the entire world. When Elisa failed to check out as scheduled, and her daily phone calls to her family, described by those who knew her as a sacred ritual, suddenly ceased, alarm bells began ringing. Her parents, thousands of miles away in Canada, knew something was terribly wrong. The Los Angeles Police Department launched their investigation with the thoroughness you'd expect for any missing person case. They combed through the Cecil Hotel with meticulous attention to detail, searching common areas, examining her room, even bringing in tracking dogs. But Elisa seemed to have simply vanished into thin air, as if the hotel itself had swallowed her whole. To understand Elisa's story, we must first understand where it unfolded. The Cecil Hotel isn't just any hotel. It's a monument to urban decay and human tragedy that has earned its reputation as one of America's most sinister establishments. Built in 1924 during the height of American prosperity, the Cecil was originally designed as a sophisticated destination for business travelers and tourists. Imagine the grandeur, the hope, the promise of what downtown Los Angeles could become. But the Great Depression had other plans. As the economy crumbled, so did the neighborhood surrounding the Cecil. Located near Skid Row, the area became a magnet for homelessness, crime, and desperation. The hotel's transformation was as dramatic as it was tragic. What was once an aristocratic haven became low-cost lodging, frequently rented by the hour, drawing the city's most destitute and troubled individuals. But the Cecil's dark reputation went far beyond economic decline. It became a beacon for something far more sinister. The hotel's most notorious resident was Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker himself. Throughout the 1980s, while terrorizing Los Angeles with a spree of violent murders and assaults, Ramirez allegedly called the Cecil's uppermost floor home. Picture this: a serial killer traversing the lobby unnoticed, disposing of blood-soaked clothes in the hotel dumpster, hiding in plain sight among the transient population. It's a testament to the sinister aura that seemed to pervade the building's worn exterior. But Ramirez wasn't the Cecil's only brush with serial murder. In the 1990s, Jack Unterweger, a former Austrian journalist turned killer, stayed at the hotel during his American killing spree. The pattern was undeniable. The Cecil attracted darkness like a magnet attracts metal. Retired police officers recall the constant stream of emergency calls, between 1 and 3 daily, reporting drug overdoses, unexplained deaths, mysterious disappearances, chilling screams echoing through the halls. and bizarre phenomena that defied explanation. For law enforcement, the Cecil wasn't just a hotel. It was a recurring nightmare, a place where tragedy seemed to breed in the shadows. As February dragged on with no sign of Elisa, the LAPD made a decision that would change everything. On February 14th, 2013, they released surveillance footage from the hotel elevator. 4 minutes of film that would become one of the most analyzed pieces of video in internet history. What the footage showed was deeply unsettling. Elisa, alone in the elevator, pressing multiple buttons with seeming urgency. But that was just the beginning. She peeks out into the hallway, as if checking for someone, or something. She steps in and out of the elevator repeatedly, her movements becoming increasingly erratic. At one point, she hides in the corner of the elevator, making hand gestures that seem to defy explanation. But here's where it gets truly eerie. Throughout this entire sequence, the elevator doors never close. Not once. This mechanical anomaly added another layer of mystery to footage that was already impossible to explain rationally. The internet exploded. Amateur detectives, conspiracy theorists, and concerned observers dissected every frame, every gesture, every shadow. Theories ranged from mental health episodes to supernatural encounters, from potential stalkers to government experiments. The footage went viral in the truest sense, spreading across platforms and spawning thousands of analysis videos, forum discussions, and blog posts. What made the footage so captivating wasn't just its strangeness. It was the human element. Here was a young woman, clearly in distress, seemingly interacting with something or someone we couldn't see. The video became a Rorschach test for viewers' deepest fears and theories about what lurks in the shadows of our world. For 3 weeks after the elevator footage's release, Elisa remained missing. The Cecil Hotel continued its grim operations while investigators searched for answers. But on February 19th, 2013, routine hotel maintenance would uncover the truth in the most horrifying way imaginable. Hotel guests had been complaining for days about problems with their tap water, low pressure, strange discoloration, and most disturbing of all, an unusual taste that made the water undrinkable. These weren't minor inconveniences. They were clues pointing to something catastrophic in the hotel's water system. A maintenance worker was dispatched to investigate the rooftop water tanks, integral components of the building's plumbing system. What he discovered would transform a routine maintenance check into a crime scene investigation that would make headlines worldwide. Elisa Lam's body was floating face up in one of the large water tanks, naked and alone. The image is haunting. This young woman who had disappeared into mystery was found in perhaps the most inaccessible part of the entire hotel. The rooftop was a secured area, far removed from public spaces, reachable only through locked doors and narrow stairwells. Police and forensic specialists descended on the scene immediately. They examined every inch of the water tanks and surrounding rooftop area, searching for any evidence that might explain how Elisa's body ended up in such an impossible location. The questions multiplied faster than the answers. How did she access the secured rooftop? What happened in the final moments of her life? And perhaps most chillingly, how long had hotel guests been drinking water contaminated by her decomposing body? 2 days after the discovery, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office released their initial findings. The verdict: accidental drowning. Elisa's bipolar disorder was noted as a contributing factor, but not the direct cause of death. The comprehensive autopsy and toxicology reports, made public in June 2013, would provide more details, but the conclusion remained unchanged. The forensic evidence painted a clear picture, at least according to official channels. No signs of physical trauma, no defensive wounds, no indication of foul play. Toxicology tests revealed no illicit drugs or elevated alcohol levels. Only prescription medications consistent with her bipolar disorder diagnosis, and nothing suggesting overdose or poisoning. Elisa was found unclothed, with her personal belongings, clothing, keys, and watch, submerged separately in the tank. All items were covered in a sandy residue consistent with sediment found in water tanks. The forensic team emphasized that bipolar disorder can sometimes lead to disorientation and compromised judgment, potentially contributing to the circumstances that led to her drowning. But for many observers, these official conclusions raised more questions than they answered. How did someone in the throes of a mental health episode navigate the complex security measures to reach the rooftop? Why were her clothes removed? How did she lift the heavy metal lid of the water tank? The coroner's office maintained transparency by publishing complete reports, but skepticism persisted. The absence of surveillance footage showing Elisa's journey to the roof became a focal point for doubt. Critics argued that the report didn't adequately explain the most puzzling aspects of the case. However, forensic experts emphasized that the physical evidence, or lack thereof, told a consistent story of accidental death complicated by mental health issues. Official conclusions rarely satisfy the Internet's appetite for mystery, and Elisa Lam's case became fertile ground for conspiracy theories that persist to this day. The peculiar circumstances, a young woman found naked in a sealed water tank on a restricted rooftop, seemed to defy the simple explanation of accidental drowning. One of the most persistent theories involves murder, possibly by individuals connected to the hotel. The Cecil's notorious history provided the perfect backdrop for such speculation. Some pointed to the hotel's association with serial killers and violent crime as evidence that dark forces were still at work. There were whispers about fellow guests with violent pasts, suggestions of staff involvement, and theories about security footage being deliberately withheld or destroyed. But perhaps the most chilling theory involves government surveillance and psychological experiments. Elisa's openness about her bipolar disorder on her blog led some to speculate that she had become an unwitting subject in covert pharmaceutical or military trials. While lacking concrete evidence, these theories gained traction due to the investigative dead ends and the disturbing nature of her elevator behavior. The supernatural explanation proved equally compelling for many observers. The Cecil Hotel's haunted reputation and documented paranormal activity made it easy to believe that Elisa might have been influenced or even possessed by malevolent entities. The elevator footage, with its inexplicable elements and Elisa's apparent interaction with invisible forces, seemed to support theories of otherworldly intervention. One particularly unsettling theory draws parallels to the 2005 horror film Dark Water, which depicted a young girl's body found in a water tank atop an apartment building, contaminating the water supply. The similarities between fiction and Elisa's reality were too striking to ignore for conspiracy theorists, leading to speculation about symbolic or orchestrated elements in her death. Now, let me share something remarkable. By 2025, advanced forensic technology began providing answers to questions that had haunted investigators for over a decade. Revolutionary techniques in digital reconstruction and toxicological analysis finally offered definitive explanations based on concrete evidence rather than speculation. Sophisticated algorithms applied to the elevator footage detected subtle microexpressions and physiological stress indicators that had been invisible to previous analysis. These cues suggested Elisa was experiencing an acute anxiety episode and severe disorientation, symptoms consistent with a mental health crisis rather than paranormal or criminal activity. Cutting-edge biochemical testing on preserved samples from the water tank revealed infinitesimal levels of rare psychoactive substances, pointing toward accidental ingestion or environmental exposure rather than intentional poisoning. Combined with Elisa's documented bipolar disorder, this toxicological evidence provided scientific backing for the medical explanation of her behavior. Perhaps most significantly, LiDAR scanning and 3D modeling allowed forensic engineers to recreate the hotel's rooftop access routes with unprecedented precision. These reconstructions demonstrated that what once seemed impossible, reaching the water tanks undetected, was tragically feasible for someone in an impaired mental state, desperately seeking safety or escape. As we reach the end of our journey into this mystery, it's important to remember what often gets lost in the speculation and theories. Elisa Lam was a real person, not just an internet enigma. She was a young woman struggling with mental health issues, far from home, staying in a place with its own dark energy and troubled history. The technological breakthroughs of recent years have reoriented the narrative from conspiracy to tragedy. The story of someone besieged by mental illness in circumstances that amplified her vulnerability. The viral elevator footage that captivated millions worldwide now appears to document the final crisis of a young woman in desperate need of help. The Cecil Hotel, after decades of tragedy and notoriety, eventually took measures to secure its rooftop structures, seeking to prevent any repetition of such incidents. But for Elisa Lam, those changes came too late. Her case remains a powerful reminder of the intersection between mental health, urban isolation, and the human tendency to seek supernatural explanations for tragedies we struggle to understand. The Internet's fascination with her story reflects our collective need to find meaning in senseless loss, to believe that there must be more to such stories than simple, heartbreaking human frailty. Despite scientific advances and official conclusions, questions linger, not because the evidence is insufficient, but because some mysteries touch something deeper in our collective consciousness. The Elisa Lam case has become more than a true crime story. It's become a modern urban legend, a cautionary tale about the dangers that lurk in the shadows of our cities. The Cecil Hotel itself has undergone renovations and rebranding, but its dark reputation persists. It remains a pilgrimage site for true crime enthusiasts and paranormal investigators, a place where reality and legend intersect in ways that defy simple explanation. Perhaps the real mystery isn't how Elisa died, but why her story continues to captivate us. In an age of information overload, her case reminds us that some human experiences, mental illness, isolation, tragedy, remain as mysterious and frightening today as they ever were. The surveillance footage that made her story famous shows us something profoundly unsettling. A young person in crisis, alone and afraid, in a place where help should have been available, but somehow wasn't. In our rush to find supernatural or criminal explanations, we sometimes forget the most haunting truth of all, that ordinary human suffering can be more mysterious and tragic than any conspiracy. Elisa Lam's story reminds us that behind every viral clip and internet mystery is a real life that mattered more than the enigma it became. As we keep questioning official accounts, legends, and wild theories, let's hold the person at the center first in our minds, a young woman whose journey ended far too soon in the shadows of downtown Los Angeles. Want to hear the piece of the puzzle most people miss? I've saved an exclusive audio segment and a deeper timeline for listeners who want the full context, details that sharpen the picture and raise fresh questions. Download the Scoob app now to get access to the full story. Bonus audio, episode notes, and source documents await. Subscribe on Scoob to get every new episode the moment it drops. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep asking questions and remember the human heart behind every mystery.